Well, hello everybody. I'm here with Norman Traversy, and we're downtown Ottawa doing a protest. There's a bunch of people here doing a protest, and I got the pleasure of finding you on YouTube and listening to your story and all the wonderful work that you're doing. I have to say I'm really impressed, and it's a pleasure to meet you and be here and have this discussion. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So could you maybe just do a little brief introduction of who you are and what it is that you're doing here, what brought you to do this protest?
Yeah, I'm an ex-firefighter, Mississauga firefighter, injured, I guess spinal injuries, PTSD, whatever most firefighters end up with. And I now live in Ottawa. And last August, I saw Brenda Lucki, the newly christened commissioner of the RCMP, in her best red serge uniform, saluting. And while she was saluting, Justin Trudeau walked up to her and gave her a hug and a kiss on both cheeks. And I thought, what contempt that man has for that person and for the office that she holds. Like, would you dream of doing that with a man? I blew a gasket. So then I thought, look at all this SNC Lavalin stuff going on. He fired his attorney general for not knuckling under, who also happens to be a woman. He has utter contempt for women, I think. And I thought, if they won't deal with this SNC Lavalin corruption, I will. And I'm just a firefighter. I've got no legal training. Well, I do now. I train myself. So anyhow, I filed what's called a private prosecution. And that is something that is in the criminal code. I think it's number 507 of the criminal code, but you can fact check me on that. And it's in the criminal code that if the police will not act on a crime, then a civilian has the right to do so. And it's called a private prosecution. So I put one together and I charged Justin Trudeau with corruption and conspiracy to corrupt, which means he got Gerald Butts and all of his buddies to also intimidate Jody Wilson-Raybould. I went to the Ottawa courthouse late August, and I plunked that down in front of a justice of the peace. And he looked at it, and he looked at me, and he says, go have a coffee for a half hour. Obviously, I got to have a meeting. So I came back, and he said, do you swear that everything in this document is true to the best of your knowledge? And I swore in the Bible that it was true. He said, you're going to have a pre-uncut hearing in 8 days. I believe it was September the 4th. So 8 days later, I had paid thousands of dollars to have a witness, Gary McHale, who is the leading expert on private prosecutions. He was successful in his prosecution against the Attorney General of Ontario and against the Commissioner of the OPP, Fantino. So I paid for him to come out and put him up in a hotel for, 2 nights, I think. And he coached me on what to say and how to act, and, so I wouldn't screw up. And that was pretty intense. And then we showed up that morning, and they said, oh, the judge is sick. Mm-hmm. They only had one judge in Ottawa, I guess, right? No extra judges at the Ottawa courthouse. Then they said, come back October 7th. So once again, Gary went back to where he lives, which is like 6-7 hour drive. And I brought him back again and put him up again at considerable expense. And we were scheduled for 9:30, courtroom 14 in the Ottawa courthouse. And I showed up with Gary. We had a great big box full of over 200 documents, evidence to what had happened with the SNC Lavalin affair. I had a dozen thumb drives with recordings of the phone calls made to Jody Wilson-Raybould, all the evidence necessary to prove corruption. And besides that, I had 4 other people with me for moral support, witnesses, to witness what was happening. And we showed up at 9 o'clock for a 9:30 hearing. And my name and Trudeau's name was not on the docket at the front desk, as it should have been. We were scheduled room 14. We went to room 14. My name wasn't there either. I was scheduled to be there. And the door was locked. So I'm knocking on the door. It's locked. We figured, okay. I kept knocking on that door till around 10 o'clock. And I wasn't hammering on the door. I was politely knocking. They couldn't have helped but hear me. And it remained locked. At 10 o'clock, the door opened. We went in. Another group of people went in. And for some reason, the clerk knew who I was. I don't know how. And he said, you people are going to have to leave. This is another matter. So we left and we waited outside. A while later, a woman in a business suit carrying a bunch of books, so I figured she was a lawyer, came out. And I said, do you know anything about the Traversy Trudeau matter? And she said, that was dealt with first thing this morning. And it was stayed. And I said, do you know why? And she says, I don't. You'll have to ask the Crown Attorney. And anyways, we finally got the door open. The room was empty. They'd gone out a back door. I've got a friend at the courthouse who is a transcription person, and she said she can get me any transcription for free as long as I don't release her name. So I had that transcription the same day. And at 9:30, they commenced the proceedings, and it was over by 9:36, and it was stayed for lack of evidence using the McHale principle, which is a Supreme Court principle, and it's named after Gary McHale, and they stayed it for lack of evidence. Well, I had Gary McHale standing next to me with the evidence, so obviously it was not lack of evidence. They did this because the election was in 10 days or so, and they locked me out of the courtroom, held the proceeding without me. That is an obstruction of justice. I'm going to deal with that. It's also a criminal act. I went to the Human Rights Commission in Canada. They won't deal with it. I went to the federal court for a writ of mandamus, which means do your job. One court telling another court to do their job. Mm-hmm. They said it's not their jurisdiction. I'm now looking at...
So you're getting the runaround.
Oh, big time, big time. I went to Elections Canada, and I said, this is rigging the election, because if I would have had my hearing, Trudeau would have lost. They won't deal with it. Mm-hmm. Everyone's scared of this man, except for me and you, I guess. But now I'm looking at going to a Quebec court and filing there and just see if they'll deal with it, and also going to the Superior Court of Ontario, which is one up from the Court of Justice, and filing there. So it's now been more than 6 months since this happened, so I can file again without it being looking vexatious. So they can't say it's vexatious. I've waited the 6 months. It's not going away. I'm not going to drop this no matter what. So
good for you. No, I commend you on what you're doing, and it's bravery and it's courage and it's standing up for your rights. And these are,
standing up for
everyone's rights.
Yeah.
And you're representing, and we need more people like you and more people supporting you. This is, our human rights are so important, and this is something that I advocate a lot about. And we have to know better what our human rights are, which I'm learning you know a lot about that, as our Canadian rights. So where can people start if they want to start looking into what their rights are, and if they want to do something? What can you say to that?
Well, it's all online. Your rights, Ayn Rand, who's a hero of mine, she said, you are born with all your rights. No one can give you a right. You're born with them already, but they can take them away.
Correct.
So you have all your rights. They're God-given rights, and they can be taken away, and it's up to you to defend your rights. And Edmund Burke in the 18th century said the only thing necessary for evil to profit is for good men to do nothing. So if you don't uphold my rights and your rights, if you don't uphold our rights, then you are on the side of evil by doing nothing.
Yeah.
You can't, silence in itself is a statement.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah, I agree with that. So, and from today's, for instance, like you can see there's people protesting here at the Hill.
It's quite a crowd.
It is quite a crowd, and the weather turned out well for us too, thank goodness. What do we hope to achieve today? And I guess there is another one coming July 1st. That's the big one, correct?
The big one on July 1st, I've got a network of thousands of people now that we're a network, so it's not just me down, it's all of us networked like a spider web. And what the plan is that we are going to have a couple of retired RCMP officers, or more if necessary, write a couple of briefs about the corruption that's going on in Canada, and they're going to make sure it's done properly, correctly, like a police document that you would take to a court to charge someone. Mm-hmm. And on July 1st, we're going to meet here, even though Trudeau says we can't. We're going to meet here. It's our land, our property. And then we're all going to march to the American Embassy around the corner here. And we are going to have a representative of the embassy meet us at the front door, and we're going to hand over those briefs. Because on July 1st, the USMCA comes into effect. That's the United States, Mexico, and Canada. It's our replacement to the free trade agreement.
Okay.
That comes into effect on July 1st. Section 27.5 of the USMCA, look it up, states that they cannot deal with a country that has corruption, and that they are obliged to investigate any allegations of corruption, which means that when we deliver those briefs about the corruption in Canada, the money laundering, the human trafficking, which is rampant in this country, they are obliged to investigate. So we're going to have the FBI and the Mexican police after Trudeau's ass, because our RCMP won't do it. So that's the plan for July 1st.
Wow, that's some big stuff.
That's big stuff.
That's big stuff.
If I live that long, but someone else will do it.
Right.
Someone else.
Well,
will
we
do
certainly are in unprecedented times right now.
We are.
And
So, you know, when's the last time Parliament was suspended?
well, I couldn't
You know
tell
what?
you.
It would be 1641.
Wow.
Around then, and the King suspended Parliament, and they chopped his head off.
Wow. That's
the English Civil
they
War.
weren't fooling around.
You don't mess around with Parliament.
No.
Well, he does.
Okay.
And the people we have now, they don't seem to care, but I care. I've
Yeah.
got 3 daughters.
Yep.
I want to have grandchildren.
Yep.
And I don't want my daughters and my grandchildren living in a country like this.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
that's my goal in life. I'm not making any money doing this.
Right.
It's costing me money, but I'm not giving up. And I've got a number of people. You know, I've got a private investigator out west, and she says, I'm just a grandmother, but I don't want my grandkids to have this. And I got someone else saying that she wants to be able to tell her grandkids what she did. And you know, I've got a 2-star general down in the States who meets with Trump regularly, who talks to me about this stuff. I've got some family members that of the president that are also aware of what's going on. So
This is very real. Very real.
is.
Yeah.
It
And
is.
this is the
It's
real
not-
world.
It's not a stunt.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. No, how interesting.
That day
Yep.
in the courtroom, when I was locked out, a well-dressed woman in a business suit, who I didn't know, walked up to me and she pointed her finger at me and said, "You know they're going to kill you."
Was that
And
a
then she
threat?
And then she walked
An indirect threat.
away. Then she walked away.
Wow.
And how did they know me when I walked into that courtroom?
Right.
I went to court services to get some documents. This is later, a few weeks later. And the woman at the counter, who I'd never met before, said, "Hi, Norman, what can I do for you?"
So was that some sort of psychological
That's,
intimidation?
No,
or-
I just thought it was bizarre.
Yeah.
Then I went back another time, and another woman said, "Hi, Norman, what can I help you with?" And I said, "How is it you know my name?" And she said, "Everyone in this building has seen your interviews." Yeah.
So that's effective.
That's effective. I was in Loblaws here in Ottawa, I'm in the checkout line. This is before this phony COVID thing. And I'm in the checkout line, and the checkout lady says, are you the nice gentleman that's taking Justin Trudeau to court? And I said, I am indeed. And she shook my hand and thanked me. So, and this has happened to me quite a bit.
Wow, how interesting.
Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to do another follow interview with you.
Anytime.
I would really appreciate that, and it's just for the viewers and just to spread, share information. I think to share information on all perspectives is very important before we make decisions and to inform ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So I have a question for you before
ma'am.
we end this. I work in the blockchain, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency space, and what do you know about that, or any interest or any knowledge?
I'll tell you.
Yes.
I'll tell you. I know a fellow that he came up to meet me with 3 other people, and he wants to bring down Canada. Do you know about him?
Who's him?
I'll tell you after, off camera. I'll tell you.
Okay.
He's a computer genius, and he has designed what he calls a new Canada. He's trademarked that title, New Canada, and he says he's going to use a blockchain system for Canada that you can opt in and become a new Canada citizen, and you can the plan, I'm no computer guy, the plan is to divide Canada into 33 million pieces, and everybody gets 1 piece.
Why 33?
That's how many people in the country.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so that's the population. I hear the number 33 a lot.
Divide it up. So you will own part of the 401. You will own all the infrastructure, all the public buildings.
I see.
We'll all be rich. And his plan is you can go to any store and buy milk, bread, cheese, eggs with your thumbprint. And that will be of no charge to you. Now, if you want to buy a giant bottle of 7-Up, that's your own money. Or if you want to buy a case of beer, that's your own money. But the essentials of life, he says, will not be charged. And he can talk to you for hours about this. It's his concept, not mine. And you'll be hearing more from him in the future. He's in hiding right now.
Okay.
The RCMP are looking for him desperately. They don't know where he is. The Ottawa police came to my door looking for him.
Wow.
And they actually tried to push their way into my suite. And when I managed to get the door closed and slide the deadbolt, the guy said, the woman police officer kicked the door, and then the guy said, we'll be back with a tactical squad and a K9 team. That's how bad they want this guy. I didn't have him. I wasn't harboring him. Now someone else posted one of his videos on their Facebook page, and within an hour there were 9 RCMP cruisers around his house in Moncton.
Oh my goodness.
Another guy in Kingston had the police walk into his house. He had his door unlocked and said, is so-and-so there? And he said no. And they said, can we go upstairs and look? And he threw them out, and they did go out. But that's how.
You have to have permits and.
Yeah, you have to have a warrant.
A warrant, I mean, to get in, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're breaking the law,
yeah.
And I'm going to hold them to account too. But that's how bad these people want this man, and I'll tell you his name off camera.
Maybe.
Okay.
No. Well, it was a pleasure, an absolute pleasure to be here with you today and have this discussion. Like I said, we're gonna do another one of these if you're willing.
As many as you want.
And I look forward to it. So, absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.